So, hello everyone, and welcome to another SES Biweekly Status Update. I'm Sarah. I'm one of the contributors of the Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core unit. And today we will talk about a very important topic, which is sustainability. A lot of discussions have happened over the last month on the forum, and we decided to collaborate with Julian, who is a sustainability and impact management expert, and conducted a really interesting survey with the Maker community, and will present the findings in today's status update call. Before I hand over to Julian, I just want to remind you that you can post any questions that you may have in the questions feature, and we will get back to you at the end of the call. So no further ado, Julian, the stage is yours.
Great. Thanks for having me. And SES, thanks once more for collaborating on this topic. So future-proofing Maker by managing sustainability. We agreed to do this research here on the question, should Maker manage sustainability, especially with a focus on what topics will be then most relevant? Like how can we get a grip on this sustainability issue and future-proof for this, the DAO? So jumping in the presentation, I think what always drives, and it's not a Maker-specific thing, what drives people when starting to discuss sustainability, it's about, okay, what the hell is this thing? Yeah, it's a total chaos often, or it is partly also seen as a more religious thing. Like sustainability cannot really be grabbed immediately by everybody. And if you now consult with a bank or with a startup or with a DAO, it is more or less the same discussion starting. So what we said we should do is use this idea of scientific approaches, scientific governance, so try to give it a method. And that's what others also do, and we applied here some used methods to start and say, introduction, what is sustainability, what is ESG? Then also the steps to identify relevant sustainability topics. So here you see already we kind of chop through sustainability and say there are different topics in it. And then also the results, what is relevant of these sustainability topics which were identified. And then we're talking next steps. These are like some ideas what could be done. This is all thought as an impulse for discussion of the DAO. So there's like no result finished, but Wouter and Juan and I, we always discussed and said, okay, how can we give an impulse and getting a grip on where to start discussing? So introduction, managing sustainability means we should start talking about what sustainability is. So meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs then in the future. So this is kind of a here concept, but it involves quite a lot of factors. It especially means that you need to look beyond mere financial performance management of a business. So here we're talking on ESG factors, because ESG, environment, social, and governance, they are the three factors when talking and also measuring sustainability and going beyond the economics, the financial performance side of an organization. Normally you then cluster them. How do you have effects on the environment? Yeah, negative, positive, on the social, and how do you actually govern this? The management in general can be said, it integrates information beyond finance. So what I personally, and what I also see in the sector is so interesting, it's about gaining information. And when you manage a business, it's always relevant to think about which information could today and in future be relevant to manage the business successfully. So for many, and we have seen this also in the last weeks on different discussions in the forum, for many, ESG is a fundamental part of business management, of business assessment now. This has really developed from being more like a nice to have thing to now it has to be there, because if you don't do a sound business management with ESG included, you miss a fundamental. What we also see as ESG and sustainability management is not, in a way, not there yet. Even financial management is ever improving, but for ESG and sustainability, I would say the learning curve is still steeper and higher. So it's still professionalization, and this is just needs to be clear. Why can Maker now benefit from integrating sustainability if you really go for the overarching thing? Cryptocurrencies in general are, of course, experienced. I don't need to tell you this, yeah, like significant increase in funding. They are also professionalization in all different steps what they're doing. And they also see more competition, which is pretty interesting because competition will starts already. Yeah, they are still small, but they are already the currencies out there which compete on this ESG notion. And governments and regulators are really putting the crypto market in focus. So many of the challenges and the opportunities with the sector faces and will face in the next years can be clustered around these topics related to sustainability. For Maker in general, this is of course clear because Maker is a very relevant part, from my perspective, especially on this proof of concept of a stable coin, proof of concept of DeFi, proof of concept of DAO. So it's very relevant that Maker is a sustainable business. It also requires positioning beyond financial management in the whole scene. So position Maker towards sustainability to manage risks better, right? Also the upsides in the business and also in the marketing, which means if you do good, you can also talk about it. You actually should talk about it. And by this increase the resilience of the whole DAO and the business. This is the idea of why Maker should integrate sustainability management. So the questions we tackled here, what are the most relevant topics we must address? Where can we contribute the most? And where are the opportunities? Where are the challenges in integrating sustainability? The latter is, of course, more than the discussion after this impulse, which topics could be relevant in sustainability. Oh, that is more a slide. I just wanted to bring in the little quote. The rest is more like, who am I and why should I talk? Can I talk about it? So my background is that I worked since 13, 14 years on impact management and sustainability management, and since 1.5 years also as a free consultant. And I think where we matched, and I really liked discussing there with Wouter, with Juan, and also with the community, the scientific governance approach, the transparency, and the promises that you give. This is all what drove me into the idea to collaborate on this research grant and give in a bit more than it's normally done. I think you can really do something with this crypto community. Number 2, steps to identify relevant sustainability topics. I integrated this part, and this could be a bit not really boring, I hope, because I'm presenting it, of course. But here you have 3 steps where you normally say you need to go through these steps to get a grip on sustainability. So you have to think about who are your stakeholders. So to kind of also understand what is the scope of this analysis of thinking about where sustainability plays a role. Then you have to discuss the overall context. What is actually going on in the world with regard to the topic sustainability, and then identify relevant areas where you, with your stakeholders, are active, and where you are involved with certain topics. Such an analysis is based on global standards, so it's nothing like somebody made up, but it's a methodological approach, which is kind of proofs of concept with the Global Reporting Initiative. I think this one is known, but I also like that they build a lot on the accountability stakeholder engagement standard. So kind of really using a concept which are already longer in the business and just made up by a consultant or somebody else. Stakeholders. So once we look on the stakeholders, and the graphs here are pretty small because you probably know them because they are part of the documents you find in the Maker Forum. When we talk about Maker, it's not only the decision makers, MKR voters, delegates, off-chain participants. It's a Maker community. We also speaking, of course, about the core units, because they are kind of the production and decentralized management and their relations to others. But we also have to go even beyond, when talking about what is the scope. There's like the real-world assets, the collateral partners, the auction participants, and then even at the very end, you have the Maker end users, customers. I would say, or we actually said this time on the stakeholder mapping, this is sufficient. You can, of course, go even further and integrate into the scope media and so on, like all the very outer people. But for this first stance, what is relevant for Maker, and as we focus also a bit about the future proofing in business, so more how are outside effects affecting Maker and how can Maker react. We stopped here and said, this is our stakeholder map. Once we look on the stakeholder map, the question, we are a global community. And what are the contexts when we talk about sustainability topics regarding risks, but also the definitions of what impact, what development, what sustainability, and this idea of long-termism could mean. I just picked 2 examples. This is, of course, not the full list, but here you have a vast mass of research. Pretty prominent is, of course, the World Economic Forum Risk Report. People can like or dislike the World Economic Forum, but the risk report is, from my perspective, pretty well researched. And you don't need to read through the topics, but the green ones are the risks rated which are related to environment, which means risk really to severely hamper the global economy. And the red ones are the social ones. So when you see the first 3 are already environment, and then 3 are coming on the social. And they are climate, extreme weather, biodiversity loss. But all the topics which are in our community probably no-brainers, partly with bankers and somebody else, it's really like eye-openers. So you have already systems which say which are the major risks we have to think about once we start managing them. Not all of them are relevant then for Maker. On the other side, and this is more like the opportunity side, if we want to pay into a global agenda, into a national agenda on what is development, into an individual agenda of development, then there are different frameworks, and the most known, and that's why I put this icon here, are the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a global agenda to define and also somehow do controlling on worldwide development. So we mapped this context of different sustainability topics and had a look and discussion. What of these topics are relevant with regard to the scope, so the stakeholders of Maker? We identified 6+1 topic, and this is CO2 footprint, relevant, of course. I think there's no discussion about managing it as an internal as also an external risk. Then we've seen cyber ecosystem risk and the developments you've seen, and this is also part of competition and professionalization. Then for Maker as a stable coin, if there's any question, just put them in the chat. Maker as a stable coin, financial inclusion plays a very relevant role because that is something the decentralized finance has as a promise. Talent and people, it's a bit more focused on the contributors, on how can you get the best talents, and their ESG and impact and sustainability plays a very relevant role today. Regulation, yes, they can dry up a lot of markets, but also push markets with regard to, like, if you are a green coin, they can even put you even higher in the market. And then community, how do you deal with different elements of community work? Are you thinking about the world community? Are you thinking about different parts and slices of the world community where you want to support? And then after the 6 topics, the 7th one is more strategy and processes. Like, how are you actually going to manage it? Because there are strategy and management processes standardized. Are you going to reinvent it? How are you going to integrate it? So that's a typically separate topic, but it needs to be discussed also. When you go for this discussion, you normally do a materiality mapping. So it's more about now thinking about what is relevant in all these sustainability topics. I just go back, like, seeing again, it's 6 topics. Now, what of this should we start working on, or what could we start discussing? Is this all relevant? And we don't know. Normally, it's not that you say, okay, I can now just say, okay, this is a topic and we have to go this way. There are different judgments and methods you can use. Normally, you say we draw a graph. This graph has on one side the discussion, how relevant to the world are Maker activities, and they then change something out of Maker. So the significance of economic, environmental, and social impacts that you as a Maker community are doing, and you or we, because I'm also active in the forum, what can we change to the outer world? But then it's, of course, and this is also about future-proofing, what is relevant to Maker? So this question, how is the world changing, and how does this affect us as a Maker community? So it's both things that you have to draw on this graph, and of course the ones which are then at the very end. Can you see my? Which are, of course, in the very end, which would be the perfect fit, relevant for both sides. So for Maker, it's super relevant to do something, and also for the world, this effect would be the greatest. This is what you, of course, would decide, but at the end, you also would probably focus on what's relevant for Maker and not so super relevant to the world. So getting this judgment clear, relevance to the world is normally an expert discussion which you do with a sustainability expert and here with the SES colleagues, thinking about, okay, how is this now affecting the world if Maker changes some behavior? But then relevance to Maker, that isn't something the major stakeholders within Maker are going to judge. And this is what the Maker survey was about. We did a survey asking delegates, Central Union facilitators and others to give their opinion on certain topics and how relevant they are. So on this Maker survey, we had the questions on these 7 topic clusters, so 6+1, and there were 31 topics we slice it through. And from the 25 responses, and I think that's necessary to state, within these 25 responses, we covered 30% of the recognized delegates and 25% of all facilitators. And I think it's important that the whole 25 answers are now reflecting the scores we're going to see later. But we also checked if this is totally different now to what delegates said or to what facilitators said. Yeah, so the ratings of recognized delegates, facilitators, they were considered separately, and if differences were higher than 10%, we discussed or excluded them even from certain discussion points. So the results are already robust to these groups. Just wait a second, no question on this, that's great. That was for me very relevant because I really wanted to show who's actually part of that survey and who actually answered the questions. So what we will see now is if you have one question here, for example, how relevant do you consider Maker's active management and reduction of CO2 emissions? There was the possibility to rate 0, 1, 2, 3, the relevance. And one thing is this expert judgment side. So how relevant is here, for example, CO2 emissions? I would probably not give it a 1. So this is an example. But then the judgment outside in, so the Maker survey, they came up with a rating, for example, of 3. And then you have a sum. Normally the interpretation ends here with the sum and saying, okay, this is the most relevant part. Sorry, spoiler. But this is how we have to interpret the findings. And we slice it through, and I'm going to try to explain graph by graph what we've seen and what we think is showing us this pattern of after the survey and the expert judgments. Okay, if there's no question here yet, I just continue. Just interrupt me if there's anything unclear, but I think you're all quick enough to grab all of that. A little chaos map. So what came out, of course, we asked for all the 31 questions, and now the graph, you remember the graph I drew, yeah? How relevant do you think is something for Maker, and how relevant is something to the world? And we have, of course, some who are beyond 2, so beyond like normal relevance to Maker, but also relevant to the world. This graph would kind of be difficult to explain, so we sliced it through, but just to show you, we of course have all the results protected. Going one step back, we started saying we have 6 topic clusters plus 1. If we look on the topic clusters and look on the averages, which we've seen there, so the sum, this is here the gray bar, and then the Maker survey results, the green one, and the inside-out judgment, so this is like the expert judgment. We see that all topics clusters are around relevant, like beyond 2, slightly beyond 2, or almost on 2, except for talent and employer, where especially also the expert judgment is, of course, not so super high on if you change your behavior towards contributors, for example, be more transparent and so on, it will not totally change the world. So we found this was already quite interesting because you don't find a totally difference in all the topics, especially on the sum. You have all of the sum scores are pretty high. On the other end, you also don't have one thing going through the roof. So all of them seems relevant, but not super urgent, super relevant, but especially not neglectable. Still, if you now dig in a bit and say, okay, nice that we now should we now do all 6 topic clusters, that could not be really the result at the very end. If you now dig into the topics, what I thought in the analysis was interesting to see that the patterns here on rating by topic, and you have all, so the sum, and you rate them, you have financial stability, CO2 emissions, the outreach, privacy, and cyber literacy, just taking the first 5. Keeping them in mind, I just jump on the next slide. Here again, you only see the Maker opinion, so only the Maker survey opinion, and you have the same topics, a little bit changed, and national regulations on top. But you also have privacy, you have financial stability, you have the outreach, you have cyber literacy. So interestingly, the sum of all plus the Maker survey, and also then, of course, the check for the delegates and the facilitators, they came with the same topics. So the patterns in this in the responses and the patterns of this analysis are pretty similar on the topics. So that is why we were able to say, let's focus now and say what are actually the most relevant topics rated. And again, here we put them on the slide. And yes, financial stability, of course, showing as a stable coin that you are able to work as a stable coin within a system, keep stability, and also work with regulators and so on and so on. Plus, number 2, CO2 emissions, to deal with this. It's either a challenge or it's an opportunity. Either you can go for this opportunity marketing side. You can also go and say, hey, regulation could really kind of get us out of the market if CO2 is now something that the regulator is really carrying when talking crypto. And then on 3, the outreach, connecting to society. I think that is really something where you as a decentralized finance community, where you're also thinking about your customers. And I think that is what really goes through, and which is also, when you think about makers' effect to the world, this outreach is, of course, amazing. Privacy, something that I'm not like naturally coming from crypto, so privacy was something I was not sure how it's going to be rated. But yes, of course, it's for you probably a no-brainer in the community. It has to be managed super strict and super careful, because this is something people in the ecosystem are really caring about. 5, cyber literacy and digital trust. This is more about, can we expand the ecosystem? Can we expand the scope? Can we get others onboarded? And interestingly, it's even in like the more boring and traditional finance analyzing documents or political documents, they all speak also about digital divide, digital trust. But also the internal crypto community says that is actually where we have also to work on, that we go beyond the normal community and get really access to the people. And then, yes, number 6, national regulations, EU, China, USA, it's just too big to not care about what regulation is talking about. We also had this number 7. Remember, we had 6 topic clusters, and we also have this discussion, strategy and process, like where does the community see potential for the next steps? This is something, yes, we could go for the sum, like if you look here on the graph, and we could, of course, and that is a normal way to go, say we only now focus on the ones which have the highest sum because it's expert plus community judgment. But you also need a high buy-in, and in a decentralized management, it's very relevant to really care about what the community thinks and what should be the next steps. So we focused here on the outside in, so the maker survey results. That's why we put this here in red. And that this connect to leading sector initiative is something which is almost on 2, so almost on relevant plus. Marketing is very relevant. Interestingly, alone, it will not make a lot of sense, but it is absolutely clear once you do something and you can consistently do marketing with it, that's a big plus. And the sustainability implementation plan, which also got a score higher than the others. So these are like the 3 highest rated on strategy and process. Also reflecting, for example, on the incentive system, for example, sustainability incentive system, which is pretty complicated, and also in companies which already do a lot on sustainability, it's still not so easy to steer on this. We also have seen here, that's also why it's not red and not even somehow bubbled, because it could, of course, have a big effect. But delegates and also CU facilities were careful with this one. Same for sustainability controlling, because this could just overburden a decentralized community. You're not a big bank who just now builds sustainability controlling. That's not the idea of that one here. Looking now on next steps. So going through this analysis, you're going to definitely also get the report. You're going to get the data of the survey. So that is all a basis for discussion. So next steps, it's more what I've seen in other institutions, what I've seen here, and where I would say this could be a good next step, a next idea on approaching the topic. So from my perspective, we can now say sustainability is relevant to future-proof Maker. It's not about just taking a topic and, oh, what a nice topic, let's also do something because we have some spare money to spend, we have spare money. But also that sustainability can and also has to be chopped down into manageable pieces. We cannot just say now we are sustainable and then either do nothing or just think about all the time and discuss forever, but it needs to be chopped down and managed. And then we have sustainability topics, and they can be clustered, and interestingly, many of these clusters, actually all 5, and then 1 plus is talent one, and they are overall relevant, seen from the community and also from the expert side. The topics are also rated by community and experts as relevant, and these are cyber literacy. I think I don't need to repeat them again, but you have some topics which are from both sides, which are shown in the pattern as relevant. And then on the sustainability management, this is, I think, always one thing you should take with care, because marketing, this is the first one here, is part of it. Yeah? So proper ESG management means you also should talk about it, because this is like a big value you have in it. It's a big opportunity you have in all this ESG management thing. But it also means that you have to do something before you talk about it. So marketing by itself will not make it, because then you have this danger of greenwashing, impact washing, and so on. And then normally the reputation risks are too high. The managing ESG can now mean you, as a community, say we want to pick one or two or one or three topics, or one CU says this is one topic I should care about. Or you place a selected number of topics in an implementation plan or initiative to further work on it, to further discuss in the community about it, and also probably look in the community who has already experience in managing it, or who probably, for example, already is managing it as one CU. So our suggestion here is that there should be like an implementation plan of going further. Yeah, Maker should not say, "Oh, sustainability, it's actually not relevant." Yeah, we've seen the absolutely opposite. So there's like 4 things you should now start discussing about. Integrate selected sustainability topic into Maker management, and how to integrate it, like not overburdening and not talking too much about it, but really like just making a change. Agree also on a sustainability implementation plan, because this is then what you can talk about later. Get also involved in the leading sector initiative and check if there's like innovative global frameworks where you can connect to. So also not reinvent everywhere the wheel, because some topics are already pretty well covered. Yeah, or they are looking for partners, yeah, which can help them to get more speed. And I think your community has a lot of people who just are quick thinkers. And they also, this topic of stay consistent with actual sustainability actions and marketing. Yeah, but from my perspective, you're such a transparent community, you actually don't have a chance to do too much on greenwashing, so it's not a big issue. But I think the point is still very relevant, that you should publish in marketing once you go a step into implementation. Yeah, but also be consistent on all of that. So now we stay with your questions, and I look forward to the discussion either here, yeah, or the discussion to come, because I follow the whole sustainability discussion on Maker and clean money, and so I think you found a nice and interesting discussion spot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, for the very in-depth explanation. We haven't seen any questions yet, so I'll kick it off with my own. Can you elaborate a bit more on the similarities and the differences that you experienced? So doing this work for a DAO as opposed to a traditional bank, do you think there's like a fundamental difference in the approach that we should take, or is it basically the same?
I think that depends very much on the topic, because every topic, of course, has its certain similarities. Yeah, like a ton of CO2, for example, is measured the same wherever it is in the world. But how you can actually now start either reducing is, if you want to reduce it on certain activities, if you want to focus more on your real-world finance, if you want to focus more on your collateral hold in cryptocurrencies and thinking about, okay, how are they mining? This is very specific to your community. What I think is also a big difference is that you have so much online and so much transparency and a lot of documents. So, for example, governance is not such a big issue, because once you have a decision, it's there for everybody. Like, even if you sometimes have to click 3 times, but once you're interested in it, you're going to find it. Yeah. So this is really what makes a difference, especially for the outer people. So the good thing is that once you claim to do something, people can check, and then they just say, yeah, it's true. And for other institutions, this reputational thing is they always have to explain it again and again, and there's credibility more about the people and so on, but you have credibility by the protocol. Yeah. So I think that's a big difference. But as I said, managing topics, it really depends on the topic. Yeah. And yes, you are a different organization, but some topics are just, like, as I said, yeah, CO2 offsetting would be, for example, something where 1 CO2 ton is 1 CO2 ton. Once you have calculated it and thought about where to deal with it, it's just a normal approach, and this is also science-based then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The other question is about the the continuous nature of the survey that we did, is this something that should be done like every 6 months, or how is this even a continuous thing that people can change their minds on? Like it's a poll that is up somewhere, and you can always change your answer. What would be the best way to continuously evaluate this?
This is kind of like, how often should you do a materiality mapping? I think the question is more, should you do this now when you start discussing it and really thinking about, let's go for the next step and work on it? Yeah. Should we have in different rounds a voting, a poll? Yeah. Should we go in the whole community, or should we really have like a I don't know, delegates must vote discussion, or I don't know how you are dealing with this, but really, like, how can we really get more backing on it as a community? I think a poll in the community, for example, would be something that could be interesting. And normally institutions often set up this sustainability plan, and then they just, okay, let's do it for 5 years. But you're just faster. You have to be also faster, but you also want to be faster. So I'd say, like, doing a quick survey to just check, are we still on track and are the topics the same? Yeah, you can. This is like a quick thing. So you could do it all 6 months. I would normally not do it like more than once a year. Once you see the patterns established. Yeah, if people now would say, hey, I have a totally different idea and I would definitely challenge everything of this, let's do it again. Why not? But you're probably going to see the same patterns. Yeah, because it's not changing since some years, what is really the big risk. For you, it could be because of regulation and also because of a community changing, or if you change the geographical focuses. Yeah, but I would not, like, it's not, we should not stay too much on assessing again and again and again, but it's more about deciding, yeah, should we now discuss doing something with it and changing our behaviors? And then you again, of course, assess it again, because then relevance could even decrease on some parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think seeking support for the outcome is probably the most important thing. And the way, that's maybe one thing where it might be a little different from a traditional organization.
Definitely.
We can't really force people to fill out the survey, so it sometimes feels a little bit like pulling teeth. But then when you come out with the results, then suddenly the reactions are there. So maybe a second iteration might make sense from that point of view.
Yeah, I agree to this, and it's actually, this is nothing which is really different to other institutions, because you often do like a voluntary sustainability survey. In, for example, in a bank last year, I did one of this one, and the participation is normally around 30%. So what are the other 70% doing? Are they against? Are they for? You really don't know. So then you normally start digging into the employment guys, and how are you, like, this is of course something different because you don't have employees, but then you kind of try to find out their opinion and how they behave in the implementation. Are they stopping it? Are they, for example, saying we do already all of this stuff, so we don't need you to tell us what to do? So this could be different reasons, but you normally see this once you start implementation. I think what you could also do is, but I had a look on this, allow for this qualitative comments, and also include the qualitative comments which are just reactions in the forum. Yeah, and put this on top to the qualitative research, saying we also had qualitative comments from the survey participants, but we also put up the results, and there were people saying it's all wrong, it's all right, but they also have a reason. So you put this as qualitative arguments to inform then the decision makers in the CUs what should be the next steps, because often single qualitative information can be really great. It's not all the crowd is always right, but sometimes single people who have a great opinion, they can be definitely also right.
Yeah. So it's a matter of finding the right balance. In the meantime, there was another question. I think this one is more looking forward. So I don't know if that will be possible to answer based on the survey, but with your experience, do you which do you think would be the largest investments that would be needed for a organization like Maker? For example, should the Maker community focus on regional electrification and the corresponding switch from fossil fuel-based power to renewable sources? Is that something that you think would be a good investment for the Maker community when it comes to sustainability?
like look into the world, using renewable energy, I think that's a no-brainer. And after a while, crypto is also moving to renewables. I think that is just coming. But like now saying yes and no and let's do it, and how much will it cost? I don't know. Yeah, because that is a lot of data-driven analysis that you're going to do once you decide, hey, we should definitely care about our CO2 footprint. And then you care about this part, but you also care about how your collateral is used and so on. So it's really, I think this is something you then decide, and where you can decide, okay, how much bang for the buck is this activity and this activity regarding reducing our CO2 emissions. If how much this is costing, I don't know. I don't have the data yet here and at hand, and we didn't calculate it on this research here.
Yeah, whose job would that even be to calculate, for example, as you say, like what is the most bang for the buck? Is that something that is part of typically your role in an organization, or is that purely more a financial analyst task to do that?
Mm-hmm. That depends how you as an organization want to set it up. If you say it's a business fundamental and it should be analyzed and being part of normal business management, there are two ways. Yeah, you normally as an institution have them in certain CUs, for example, a topic which is relevant. They then have to deal with it. They get a new topic on top of what they're already doing and have to deal with, I don't know, how can we calculate this and that. Yeah, but normally you then need one unit, of course, to build the dashboard. Yeah, and to say, okay, these different units analyze, because one unit is more relevant for the mining, one relevant, and so you analyze and get all the data together, and then you can say, okay, this unit has so and so much CO2 tons, and if you want to get rid of it, we need to change, for example, how we mine, or we need to change our collateral type, or we need to change, and which costs are going to involve this. And then you build a decision platform out of it, and you say, okay, this decision is actually low-hanging fruits. Let's go and do them immediately and bring them to a vote. But the others need further discussion, because it could be either super high investment or something technology is not there yet. Sometimes it's even you're stuck. If you increase the price too high, people will run away, and this is really worth CO2, because you always have to think the business has to run. Yeah, and that is something you always have to keep in mind when discussing sustainability. It's not like a one solution and then you just go and have CO2 covered, but it's really just dealing with the topics as you do it with financials. Yeah, because this is also an ever-going discussion.
Yeah, so the order is really establish the priority of and the relevance, then look into which solutions would be the most effective to the highest priority, and then come up with that implementation plan that basically is similar to a roadmap for a product or other initiatives in an organization. Is that right?
Yeah, and the great thing is with a DAO, you also have some topics which are just pretty nice to slice, and where it's pretty much clear who is caring about this topic, or it's 2-3. But then in a DAO, it's just people say, yeah, we are, of course, as a CU, we are of course tackled by this or facing this problem, and we're dealing with it. Full stop. So you don't need another management layer and whatever thing about it, but people just say, okay, we understood, we manage about it and report about it. And of course, then the question is, do you need to bring the information together to then do marketing? Do you need to do to get the information together to have the community set up to understand what are the whole sustainability measures? But it's not that then you need everywhere a sustainability person running around in every CU. And I would not overload that. Really focus, and then topic by topic and slice it down to the people who can deal with this relevant.
So, but one thing you do bring up as an important factor is collecting metrics, right? Making things measurable. Are there any metrics that you have in mind that might be useful for Maker to start collecting things that came up through your discussions? I see there was a similar question. So, what would these KPIs look like?
Yeah, like the marketing KPIs, but that is from what I've seen is it's normally really topic, activity, and institution specific. What are the KPIs to then show success? Yeah, and from my perspective, yes, you could of course now give yourself a sustainability rating, but this doesn't really say something. But it's more that you have to drill it into one topic, and then, as you said, you go for marketing and say, "Well, we're going to do a check on how is Maker seen worldwide, yeah, with the company checking on media response, and then you just say, okay, there's like 0 votes for sustainability, and in 2 years you just say, wow, that's a green stablecoin. It's for the green economy. It's going to, the green economy is coming, and Maker is prepared. They have understood, yeah, so they have a consistent way of dealing with it. This is, for example, one step you could ask in marketing. On other sides, it's more how much of your assets are, for example, in risk of stranding, or how much of your mining is at risk to dry out because of regulation, or like this is also kind of risk indicators. And yeah, you have seen that in the EU when they just almost ruled out Bitcoin. Yeah, just almost. I don't know if they didn't thought about it or if they really wanted to do it and they hope nobody cared. But this was got out a week before or 2 weeks before it ended. Yeah. So yeah, but like saying now this are the 10 KPIs. So we are not there yet with this. What is the focus? Yeah, I think that is the next step, to just say, okay, now if these are the topics, what is actually, if we drill into these topics, on what should we agree? What should be the KPIs we need to manage now? Yeah, to show we are going towards sustainability and towards future proofing.
Yeah, indeed, and hopefully this report can inspire some good discussion. Sarah?
Yeah, just one follow-up question, because my background is in marketing, and I think you mentioned this topic a few times. And I do also remember in your survey there were some open questions, and you touched on kind of qualitative versus quantitative research. Did you get any qualitative answers on like what these marketing efforts could look like? Because at the moment for me it's still a little bit vague to see like what would be the first step with regards to marketing, which was one of the 3 main topics we should first tackle. Like what would that implementation look like, and how can we kind of act on it?
No, we didn't get it. Like there were a lot of comments, but they didn't touch on, hey, let's do this. Yeah, and like there were actually no comment on saying this is now the new KPI for going on marketing, or how should we approach it. But most comments on the qualitative side, they were more, can you integrate this topic? Is this really something Maker should do? Because I really understand integrating sustainability into crypto is really like bringing a new wave of ideas and a whole topic world, yeah, to the community. Yeah, that future proofing means like really now information is going to be way bigger than it was before. On marketing, what I normally like, this is really a question everybody comes up with. This is not institution specific. You can, of course, only build marketing on reasonable information. And for you, this is now very special because you can really only build this on existing information, and you are so transparent. You have to first act and then do marketing. And if you act and say, we did here, yeah, this analysis, we now want to prioritize, and the next steps are X, Y, Z. This is something you can use in marketing, but this is all you can do. Yeah. And yeah, that's where we stand. So I think it's something that you just should kind of go aligned with what we do with sustainability and talk about this one. And I think that is also what I've seen on all this impact, either washing or real impact creation, and the same with sustainability. This transparency is actually at the end when marketing goes through the roof. Yeah, because just talking numbers and how great you are and how green you are and whatever, it's not really something that people want to hear at the end. They really want to hear that you see there are conflicts, there are problems, and you just start tackling it. Yeah, you try to develop something and you try to build solutions. Yeah, entrepreneurship means you just build solutions for problems out there. And I think that is how you can be really like on the marketing side. Yeah, because you didn't start as a community to make it on all sustainability topics. Yeah, you could, of course, then use it more as a decentralized finance and social financial inclusion part. But also there you are short on information that you can already use on the marketing side.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Sorry for not saying that's the solution. For most questions, I just don't have the blueprint. It's not there. Yeah, it's really managing it.
Yeah, but I still believe that your presentation today and the report is a great starting point to get the community to focus their discussions more on the topics that you identified. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the next steps are in this approach and this endeavor. So thanks very, very much for your insightful presentation. Yeah, everyone attending this call today, we will obviously share the results and more insights, as well as the recording on the forum, on our YouTube channel, and on the SES website. So keep your eyes peeled. And yeah, I wish you a very nice weekend and can't wait to see you at the next status update call.
Sarah, thanks, Walter, for having me.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Julian.
Julian.
See you.
Bye.